My parents refused to babysit my 5-year-old because she's too much, not their responsibility. Can you even imagine being in a hospital bed, battling a ruptured appendix and a raging fever, only to find out your own parents abandoned your 5-year-old child to go on vacation? It sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, that was my reality, and it led to the most shocking family intervention you could ever imagine. It all started when I landed in the ER with a ruptured appendix and a 102-degree fever. I was in excruciating pain, and as they wheeled me in, a nurse asked who would be watching my daughter. Lily, my sweet, talkative, sometimes loud 5-year-old, who sings the same Encanto song on repeat until you beg her to stop. She's the kind of kid who hugs strangers and calls dandelions wish flowers. She's just a little girl who needed someone, anyone, to be there for her the one night I couldn't be. I remember telling the nurse, with a confidence I didn't feel, that my parents were already on their way. I really shouldn't have said that. While I was still in triage, my mom called. I had the phone on speaker, the nurse checking my vitals, and before I could even explain what was happening, my mom's voice, cold and detached, cut through the pain. "We've decided we're still going to the lake house with your sister," she said, as if it was already decided. "We promised her kids, and you know how they look forward to it." My stomach dropped. "What about Lily?" I choked out. And then the words that crushed me. The words that still echo in my head. "She's exhausting. Not our problem tonight." I honestly thought I was hallucinating from the fever. She didn't ask what had happened to me. She didn't ask where Lily was or if she was okay. She just hung up. I called again. No answer. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Then I got the text, "We'll be out of service for a while. Please don't make this dramatic." Dramatic? My 5-year-old was home alone. I had maybe 20 minutes before they put me under for surgery, and no one, absolutely no one, was coming for her. I tried 2 neighbors. One was at work, the other didn't pick up. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely text Lily. Her immediate response? "Are you coming back soon?" That was it. Something inside me just snapped. I called Aunt Rachel, my dad's little sister. The only person in my family who still treated me like a human being. She lives 2 hours away and hates driving in the dark. But when she picked up, I didn't even say hello. I just blurted out everything. She listened. Silently. For a few long seconds. Then, in a voice so calm it was unnerving, she said, "I'm coming in the morning. You focus on Lily. I'll handle the rest." There was something so utterly final in her tone. I stayed awake as long as I could, texting Lily over and over, keeping her company through the screen. I told her to lock the door, not open it for anyone, stay on her bed with her tablet until I messaged her again. I just wanted her to feel like I was there, even though I wasn't. At 9:41 p.m., her replies stopped. I assumed she'd fallen asleep. I stayed up until they sedated me. When I woke up the next morning, Aunt Rachel was already there. She'd brought coffee, a phone charger, and a look on her face I hadn't seen before. Calm, yes, but dangerous. I told her everything again, even though she'd already heard it. She didn't interrupt, just nodded slowly. Then, with that same steely glint in her eyes, she stepped out into the hallway and made one phone call. She wasn't gone long. When she came back in, I asked what she said. All she told me was, "They're on their way. They'll be here in 2 hours." I thought she meant my parents were coming to apologize. Oh, how naive I was. 2 hours later, my parents were speeding back from their vacation in full panic mode. Not for me, not for Lily, but because they had just found out what Aunt Rachel had done, and they were begging her not to go through with it. I found out later that Rachel hadn't yelled during the call. She hadn't threatened. She hadn't argued. She just told them what she'd done. She had called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the one who helped her restructure her company 3 years ago when she sold part of it and made more money than anyone in our family ever expected. She never bragged about it, just quietly built her life while everyone else was too busy judging mine. But that morning, she used her resources like a scalpel. She told them she had already filed an emergency report with Child Protective Services, with her lawyer's help. Told them she'd forwarded screenshots of my texts, a time-stamped message from Lily, and my hospital intake records. Told them she'd named them both in the complaint as the last legal guardians contacted before my daughter was left home alone overnight. My dad tried to say it was a miscommunication. My mom cried. But they knew exactly what they'd done. They thought I'd cover for them, that I'd be too embarrassed to make noise. They didn't count on Rachel. While they were flying down the highway, desperately trying to reach my aunt's phone, she was sitting next to me in the hospital, calmly opening a bag of snacks like we were watching a matinee. "I'll be applying for temporary guardianship for Lily today," she said, her voice steady. "Once that's in motion, you can breathe. They won't have any say in what happens to her anymore." I didn't even know what to say. I'd never seen anyone do something like this for me. Not in this family. By the time my parents arrived, red-faced and panicked, Lily was already safe at Aunt Rachel's house. Rachel's friend had picked her up that morning, brought her breakfast, toys, and a kitten named Milo to play with. She was fine. More than fine. And she still hadn't asked about my parents once. My parents rushed into my room. My dad asked if this was a joke. My mom asked how I could air family business like that. They acted more embarrassed than concerned. Then my sister called 5 times in a row. When I finally picked up, she started screaming, telling me I was destroying everything, that her kids were crying because the vacation was cut short. "Do you even realize what kind of chaos this causes for all of us?" she shrieked. All of us? Not Lily, not me. I just handed the phone to my aunt. She didn't say much, just listened. Then, calmly, she said, "I've given you all plenty of space to fix this. You didn't. So now you'll have to earn it back." And she hung up. My parents tried one last thing. They said they'd take care of me during recovery if I just agreed to call off the lawyer. Rachel simply told them I'd already signed paperwork making her my medical proxy until I was discharged and they could leave. And they did. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Because my aunt wasn't just angry. She was planning something. And whatever it was going to change the entire family. I spent the next 2 days recovering, mostly in silence, with occasional nurse visits and texts from Rachel. Lily was doing great. She'd slept in a big guest bed with the kitten curled up beside her, ate pancakes for breakfast, and was already calling my aunt's house the fun house. Meanwhile, my parents had gone radio silent. I assumed they were regrouping, trying to figure out how much damage had been done, whether CPS would show up, and what the neighbors might find out. I expected guilt. I expected fake apologies. I didn't expect what Rachel told me next. She came back on the 3rd morning with a manila folder and a look that meant business. She sat beside my bed and said, "There's something I think you should see." Inside the folder was a copy of a revised will. Her will. She had quietly updated it the day after her phone call to them. And in it, she had removed both my parents and my sister entirely. Everything she owned, her house, the company shares, her savings, was now set to go to Lily. Not me, Lily. And if anything ever happened to me, Rachel had named herself as Lily's legal guardian and trustee. She'd already had it notarized. I was stunned. Not because I wanted her money. I didn't. I still don't. But because I had never seen anyone cut off my parents so cleanly, so surgically, and without a single dramatic explosion. She wasn't punishing them emotionally. She was hitting them where they lived. Then she pulled out one more sheet of paper. It was a list, names, dates, small bullet points. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She said it was every incident over the last 10 years where my parents had dropped the ball. Missed daycare pickups, forgotten birthdays. That time I got laid off and asked to move in for a month, and they said I'd be setting a bad example for my sister's kids. I hadn't realized someone else had been keeping track. Rachel had even printed old texts, ones I didn't know I still had, where my parents called me a mistake that somehow keeps making more mistakes. She wasn't just confronting them now. She'd been watching for a long, long time. By noon that day, my parents were blowing up her phone again. This time it was my sister, too, begging to talk, wanting to meet, saying they'd do anything to make things right. And then came the biggest surprise of all. Rachel agreed. She told them she'd be taking care of me while I recovered. And during that time, they would prove they were capable of being real parents, not just to me, but to Lily. She laid out ground rules: daily check-ins, grocery runs, zero complaining, no passive-aggressive comments, and above all, respect. They said yes to everything. I couldn't believe it. The same people who abandoned their 5-year-old granddaughter to go on a lake trip were now agreeing to basically be our full-time assistants while I lay in bed watching bad hospital TV and eating Jell-O. And maybe that would have been enough of a twist. But Rachel hadn't told them about the second lawyer. Not yet. By the time I was stable enough to move around with help, my parents had already transformed into the most overly helpful, eerily cheerful versions of themselves I'd ever seen. My mom showed up at the hospital with a bag of fresh fruit and Lily's favorite blanket. My dad offered to scrub my bathroom and even fix the busted door hinge he'd ignored for a year when I lived at home. I wasn't buying it. Neither was Rachel, but she let them keep playing house. "You give people enough rope," she said once, "they'll either climb or hang themselves." I didn't ask what she meant at the time. I was too tired. And honestly, I didn't care what they did anymore. I had Lily safe, Rachel in my corner, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't fighting alone. But on the 5th day of my recovery, Rachel showed me the other folder. Different lawyer, different plan. She had set up a legally binding agreement. If my parents and sister wanted to stay in her will, or even in her life, they would need to sign a long-term family accountability contract. Not a joke, not a bluff, a real legal agreement with outlined consequences. In exchange for staying in her will, they'd provide a set number of childcare hours every week without pay, attend one family counseling session a month together, be legally restricted from interfering with any future decisions about Lily's care, schooling, or medical needs, and agree that if they missed one obligation without just cause, the will was void for them permanently. Rachel even offered to sweeten the deal. She promised to help them with their debts, their future plans, even my sister's failing business, but only after 6 months of consistent behavior. They were stunned when she laid it all out in her lawyer's office. At first, they thought it was some elaborate bluff. My mom scoffed. My sister flat out refused. Rachel just said, "That's fine. We'll move forward without you." My dad sat there in silence for a long time, then finally asked if there was any room for negotiation. Rachel's only response? "You're lucky there's even a seat at the table." They signed. Not because they cared. Because they saw what they were losing. And for the first time, someone was willing to take it all away. That night, Rachel brought Lily back to the hospital to visit me. She came running into the room like it had been months instead of days. She told me all about Milo the kitten, how Aunt Rachel let her pick her own bedtime, and how they had secret cereal at night and played flashlight tag in the hallway. Then she said something I'll never forget. She climbed onto the hospital bed beside me and whispered, "I don't want to go back to Grandma's house. Can we just stay at Aunt Rachel's forever?" I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just nodded and kissed her head. Because as far as I was concerned, that was home now. But the most shocking part? My parents didn't argue. They drove us there the next day. It felt surreal walking through my aunt's front door and seeing my parents take off their shoes like guests, not like the people who used to treat me like a burden under their own roof. Rachel handed them a printed schedule the moment we arrived, color-coded, labeled by task and responsibility. My mom stared at it like she'd just been handed a prison sentence. My dad let out this weak little chuckle and asked, "Is this really necessary?" Rachel just pointed to the bottom where she had written in bold, "One missed task equals removal from the agreement. No exceptions." They nodded. No argument, no pushback, just a quiet, uneasy agreement. And that's how it started. Every morning for the next few weeks, my parents showed up. They were on time, sometimes early. My dad would take Lily to preschool in Rachel's SUV, and my mom started prepping little bento-style lunches with smiley face fruit and notes inside that said, "Have the best day ever." They were putting in effort like I had never seen before. Not when I was a kid. Not when I was a struggling single mom. Never. Rachel kept a checklist on the fridge. She checked every single box every day. My dad taught Lily how to ride a bike out front. She fell twice, cried once, then screamed with joy the third time around when she stayed up all the way to the end of the driveway. My mom braided Lily's hair every morning before school and had learned the names of all her friends by the second week. They both sat through Frozen for the 7th time without complaining, which honestly felt like a miracle in itself. Even my sister got involved. She started showing up in the afternoons with craft supplies and puzzles. She'd stay late to help with dishes or play with Lily while I rested. One night, she quietly admitted she'd been jealous of how much attention our parents gave her kids and how little they gave to me. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in years. I didn't forgive her on the spot, but I saw something shift. They were all trying, genuinely trying, for Lily and maybe for themselves too. But I didn't let myself get too comfortable. Neither did Rachel. She kept records of everything, notes, photos, daily logs. Not to punish anyone, but to make sure no one forgot why this all started. There were no gold stars, just the quiet, constant message, you want to be family, act like it. And they were acting like it. Then came the part one never expected. One evening, Lily tripped in the backyard chasing the kitten and scraped her knee. I started to get up from the couch, still sore from surgery. But before I could even lift myself, my dad was already outside. He scooped her up, calmed her down, cleaned her scrape with the first aid kit, and carried her in, singing some nonsense song about brave little bears and magic band-aids. I just sat there watching, remembering all the times he made me feel like I was too dramatic, too sensitive, too much. Now he was the one wiping away tears. Later that night, Rachel sat beside me while Lily was asleep, the kitten curled up at her feet. She passed me a folder and said, "I think it's time." Inside was a deed. A small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood outside the city. Nothing flashy, but clean, new, and mine. Paid in full. My name was on it. I didn't speak for a full minute. Rachel just looked at me and said, "Every mother deserves solid ground. No more temporary. No more hoping someone else does the right thing. This is your reset." I think I whispered, "Thank you." I'm not even sure. She wasn't done. "I'll step back soon. You'll be strong enough. They'll either keep showing up or disappear again. But this time they don't get to take anything from you. Not your peace, not your child, not your future." And she meant it. For the first time, the road ahead didn't feel like survival. It felt like a beginning. Lily was safe. I was healing. And my family, as broken as they'd been, were finally doing the work. No speeches, no empty apologies, just real everyday effort. We weren't whole yet. But for once, we were becoming something better. 2 weeks later, I was discharged. Rachel drove me and Lily to the new townhouse herself. She'd stocked the fridge already, bought little lamps, even hung a wind chime by the front door. I didn't ask her to do any of that. She just knew what it would feel like to walk into a house that was really mine. No one else's rules, no one keeping score. Lily ran from room to room like it was a castle. Her favorite part wasn't the toys or the big window in her new bedroom. It was the little mailbox with our last name on it. She shouted, "Look, it's really our house." And it was. The first few days it was quiet, almost too quiet. I didn't know what to expect. But then my parents came by, not unannounced, not out of obligation, but with groceries and Lily's favorite cookies. They stayed for an hour, played a game, left without making it about them. Then my sister texted and asked if she could take Lily to the museum over the weekend. Just the two of them. No guilt, no attitude. They were showing up. Still awkward sometimes, but consistent. I didn't think that was possible for this family. I really didn't. Rachel stopped by every other day at first, then less and less. She said she wanted to give us space to become whatever we were going to be without her hand on the steering wheel. But the difference was I knew now she was only a call away, and so did Lily. The contract was still in place. Rachel kept it active, but no one had broken a rule since. One night, my dad asked if he could hang a picture in Lily's room. One she had drawn of all of us holding hands, with stick figures labeled Mom, Lily, Auntie, Papa, Nana, and even Milo the kitten. I let him hang it. He used a level and everything. Another time, my mom showed up with a little charm bracelet that had one letter, M. She just said this was long overdue and hugged me. I don't know what changed them. Maybe it was the fear of losing everything. Maybe it was Rachel's unwavering pressure. Maybe it was seeing how easily they could be replaced. Or maybe it was the first time in their lives someone had held up a mirror and didn't blink when they didn't like what they saw. Whatever it was, it worked. We're not perfect. We never will be. But we're trying. All of us. Lily's thriving. I'm back on my feet. And my parents, they're still earning their place one day at a time. And for once, they don't seem to mind. Rachel still swings by sometimes, usually unannounced, with good coffee and a new book for Lily. She never talks about what she did for us. She doesn't have to. We live in it now. The proof. So yeah, this is the story of how everything broke and how one person, one good, steady, no-nonsense woman, made sure we didn't stay broken. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Truly, it means something to share this and know someone out there might understand. Has anyone else ever faced a family wake-up call like this? What would you have done in my place? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.